Posted by you/wondersoftworld_. Growing up, I always remember my mom being a single mom. I don't remember the exact moment she told me my dad was dead because I was so young. I have kind of always known. My mom told me that my dad died in a car accident 2 months before I was born. She said he was hit by a drunk semi-driver and was killed instantly on impact. Obviously, no one questions their own mother, especially at a young age. You believe her every word. This is what I always told people growing up if they asked about my dad. I would say I didn't have a dad because he was killed. My mom even claimed to be a widow on financial aid papers. Whenever I asked questions, my mom said things that just made sense to me. For example, "Mom, why don't you have any photos of Dad?" She told me they all burned in a house fire started by the dryer right after I was born. This made sense because we had moved to a new house when I was very young. Again, why would you question your mom? I tried to research my dad and his death, but nothing ever came of it. I assumed that back in the day, they didn't have computers or the internet, or if they did, there wasn't much. I later found out his name was Donald according to my birth certificate. The only reason I discovered this was because I had to force my mom to give it to me so I could get my license at 16. A lot of the time, I tried to ask more questions as I got older, but my mom became visibly angry when I did. Eventually, I just stopped because I didn't want to get yelled at anymore. This drained our relationship growing up. My mom and I were never really close. I tried asking family members questions, but literally, no one, not even my grandma, knew anything. My mom and grandma are super close, so this was very odd to me. The last time I asked my grandma before I finally asked my mom one last time, my grandma said, "I don't know who or where your dad is, but I know your mother loves you." Holy crap, when my grandma said that, I got goosebumps and knew something was very wrong. Fast forward to when I was 19. I started to see a therapist after being a victim of attempted kidnapping and being diagnosed with PTSD. My therapist told me to take a DNA test to possibly find out more about my dad's side. This way, I could learn more without having to ask my mom and make her angry again. I asked my mom to pay for the DNA test because I was a poor college student at the time. She immediately got so mad and yelled at me. She claimed that the government was going to clone my DNA and sell it. So, I never ended up taking it. After that, I didn't bring it up again. Fast forward to when I was 20 years old, around Thanksgiving time. My 3 friends and I had a fun day of baking cookies and talking all day long. Until I brought up the stories of my past and my dead father. I had a conspiracy theory I made up about my life, totally as a joke. I had told my therapist once and now my friends. The theory: what if my mom had a one-night stand with a rock star/musician and got pregnant with me? She never was able to find him again, so she couldn't tell him. My mom is considered the golden child among her siblings. So, in order to remain in the good graces of my grandparents, she told them she eloped and got married, then got pregnant with me, and shortly after, my dad died in a car accident right before I was born. It would make total sense why none of my family met him or knew him if it was a short relationship. My theory wasn't too far off. But this is what really went down. My friends all told me that my stories didn't really add up. A lot of them said they seemed odd but never mentioned it before. My friends paid for me to take a DNA test finally. I took the DNA test and then confronted my mom about it. She finally confessed that she always wanted to have a child but never wanted to get married. She found a clinic that did sperm donor pregnancies. She had 2 miscarriages before me, all with different donors. The 3rd time, she got pregnant with me. The name Donald came from donor. There was no dad who died in a car accident, it was all lies. With my DNA test results, I mostly had first cousin matches and didn't think much of it. But what I didn't know was that first cousins and half-siblings share a similar amount of DNA. A few weeks later, a girl messaged me claiming to be my half-sister. She was able to answer all the questions I had always had. The reason my mom couldn't answer those questions wasn't because she was upset that he had died, but because she truly didn't know. The girl who messaged me was correct, she was my half-sister. She introduced me in a group chat to the other siblings. This was 3 years ago, and we only had 30 half-siblings at the time. Now we are up to 50 and expect more to still pop up. We are from all over the country. We will never truly know how many of us there are because of how messed up the donor industry is. As for my dad being alive, we found this out recently. After years of research and sleuthing, my sisters found our donor through leads from the DNA test. We have reached out to him, and he is grateful to know about us. We have limited contact due to his family and his horrible wife. His wife wants to keep her good reputation, as if helping families get pregnant is a bad thing. Partly, I think his wife is homophobic. She is very religious, and most of our siblings' parents are same-sex couples. Our donor never told his family about being a sperm donor in college because of his extremely Catholic background. I wish he would tell them so we could meet our cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. But it's unlikely he ever will. He rarely talks to us, only occasionally saying happy birthday or Merry Christmas, but that's mostly it. Thankfully, he was able to give us updated and accurate medical information. There have been a few donor child stories on the Two Hot Takes podcast, but my story is a bit different from what I've heard before on the pod. Sadly, this is common in the donor children community. Many parents lie to their children with no intention of ever telling them the truth. In the 90s, no one ever expected DNA tests to be what they are today. Additional info from up. I am in the USA. Everything I am about to state applies to my country. If you were in another country, you would need to do your own research on the laws. One thing to note is that the USA is the least strict and does the least amount of testing. Most other countries have actually banned anonymous donations. There are bills currently circulating to ban anonymous donations in the USA, but they are still being voted on. If his wife doesn't want to meet us, that is 100% fine with me. Siblings have asked to meet our donor, not her. She shouldn't be controlling his every move or deciding if he can meet his offspring or not. It should be his choice. A lot of what you are saying is what society has taught you to believe about sperm/egg donations. Many donor-conceived children are very against that way of thinking. No, it is not just donating and saying goodbye. You are creating human life. Whether directly or through someone else, it is still creating life. It is 100% natural to want to know where you come from. Ask any donor-conceived child or even people who are adopted, and they will say the same thing. Even children with two loving, amazing parents still express a desire to know more about their biological mom or dad. It should never be something you just do to make some quick cash and then forget about. Sperm/egg donation companies advertise that way because they know college-aged students need quick money and are too naive to think it through fully. Offspring will and can search for you, and there is nothing illegal about that, especially after they turn 18. Legally speaking, fertility/donation clinics are supposed to provide offspring with medical information or updated medical information whenever they request it. If the clinic doesn't have up-to-date information, they are supposed to contact the donor to get that information to provide to the offspring. Like I said before, the industry is very sketchy, and many clinics do not follow the laws or rules in place. We contacted our clinic multiple times, both as offspring and through our parents, and the clinic still would not give us the updated medical information that we deserve and have a right to. The donor also has the right to ask how many live births there have been using their sperm. Live births means how many babies made it to term, were born into the world, and lived. Some clinics will give identifying information, and some won't. But again, they are sketchy and did not do this. Our donor wanted to know and asked them many times. Our clinic went so far as to tell the parents not to report back live births, which is technically illegal, because they wanted to sell more sperm from our donor. He was a very popular donor, so the clinic wanted him to keep donating so they could make more money. Even after he wanted to stop, they kept asking him for more. Most parents of my siblings confirmed that the contract stated that after 3 live births, the rest of the sperm would be retired or destroyed so that there wouldn't be too many offspring from each donor. Obviously, this was a lie and did not happen. Because the live births weren't reported accurately, we will never truly know how many of us there are. The main reason we needed to find our donor was because our sister, now 27, had cancer at 22 years old. Thankfully, she survived and is now in remission, but most people with her type of cancer don't make it. We needed to find out if it came from his side. If it did, it would be necessary to know what kind of screenings, regular tests, or checkups we should be doing to catch or prevent the cancer early enough to treat it. We could also actively do things as preventive measures. The biggest reason for finding him was for updated medical information, not to meet him or have him as a father figure. None of us expected him to be a father figure. Some of my siblings don't even want to talk to or meet him. Because the USA is the least strict, there have been many cases of criminals donating when they legally shouldn't have been able to. Other cases include people with autoimmune diseases, mental health issues, or other conditions. In our case, our donor should have been denied, because he has ADHD. He has passed this on to many of us, and now we have to suffer with it because he was not put through the proper testing required by law. By law, all potential donors are supposed to be screened for STDs, STIs, mental disabilities, physical disabilities, and criminal history. They also have to be 21 plus and either seeking a college degree or have graduated with a college degree. Most clinics here in the USA are extremely sketchy and only screen for STDs and, sometimes, mental illnesses like DID, Down syndrome, or bipolar disorder. Our donor never had to respond when we contacted him because he was originally anonymous, but he did, which obviously means he wants to talk to us and keep in contact. He was very happy to find out about us and even cried. Legally, there is nothing that says we can't try to find him or contact him. Being anonymous just means that the clinic will not give out any identifying information like his name or address. We are allowed to do DNA testing to try to find the donor and reach out to them. If he didn't want to have contact with us, he could have left us on red or not responded. Most siblings think it would be cool to meet him and his family. It isn't a life or death thing. We will be okay without meeting him or his family, but it would be nice to see what similarities we have or what we have in common with them. Update 21.5 months later. Hi, Too Hot Takes Friends. I wanted to update you all about my story. I was 20 when I discovered that I had 30 siblings. I recently turned 25, and now we have 54 siblings. We are likely to find more during the holidays, as many people receive DNA tests as gifts or buy them on sale at that time. Unfortunately, we will never truly know how many of us are out there. The donor industry is extremely sketchy and doesn't keep accurate records of live births, allowing them to sell more. I got married in September, and we just received our photos back. 4 of my sisters were my bridesmaids, and one of my brothers attended as well. Most of them drove between 7 to 13 hours, and some even flew across the country to be there for the wedding weekend. This experience was something I never dreamed of as a little girl, but I am so happy I got to share my wedding day with my siblings by my side. My friends, who bought me the DNA test, mentioned in the original post, were also at the wedding and met my siblings for the first time. It was a full circle, surreal moment. Now on to the real tea of the evening. My family members still had no idea about any of this. Literally none of them. My wedding was my debut, you could say, of my mom's long-held secrets. I was tired of bearing her burden because it was never mine to hold. The wedding program included my siblings' names and labeled them as sister of the bride or brother of the bride. My mom had refused to give a speech at the wedding for some reason. I told her that a parent typically does this and that the groom's father was giving one. She still refused, so I told her my sisters would instead. She said that was fine, but I don't know what she expected them to say since they weren't going to lie for her either. They checked with me first to see if it was okay to talk about the siblings and how we found each other. I said, screw it, do it. During the speeches, it felt like dropping a bomb and then walking away. I got to sit back, grab some popcorn, but no literally, because we had popcorn as a cocktail snack, and watch the show unfold. My 3 sisters gave a speech together, and it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. They talked about how we all took DNA tests and how I was found. The looks on my aunts, uncles, and older cousins' faces were priceless. I'm so glad we have a videographer and should be getting those back soon too. They were in utter shock and disbelief. Their reactions were almost as entertaining as the speech itself. It felt incredible to finally be able to speak openly about my life. Of course, I noticed a lot of whispering and strange glances afterward, but that was no longer my problem to fix. Thankfully, my narcissistic mother managed to keep it together during the wedding, of course, because she has to maintain a front for the world. However, the following week, once we were back home, she was absolutely awful to me, and she still mostly is. Ultimately, I believe it was 1000% worth it, and I would do it a million times over again. The truth always comes out. Since we found our donor and have some contact with him, I sent him photos of the siblings and me from the wedding. He was thrilled for us, wished us the best, and said we all looked beautiful. I replied, thank you so much. I guess we have some good genes. My friend and I met Morgan and Lauren at a live show, and saying it was one of the best moments of my life is an understatement. For the photos you've all probably been waiting for, I know Morgan has, I will attach them. It was a challenging journey to get here, but thank you all for the love and support along the way. Up in the comments. That's okay if you don't understand, and I wasn't expecting anyone to. I just wanted to share an update with everyone. If you think I'm a bad person, that's fine too. People on the internet only see a sliver of our life and our story. I wanted to go into my new life and marriage burden-free. Most of my extended family members, after the wedding, I will never see again unless someone dies or has another wedding. Our grandma was holding the family together, and once she passed, everything fell apart. Thankfully, I was able to tell my grandma before she passed, while she was still well enough to understand. She wasn't upset and was very accepting and happy that I got to meet my siblings. If you go back to the original post, most of the reason my mom came up with this story was to stay in the good graces of my very Catholic grandparents, especially my grandma. Now that she has passed, I thought it was the best time, and likely the only time in my life, that my siblings and extended family members would ever be in the same room. My sisters didn't go into detail about my mom's lies. They kept the focus on the good things, like our sibling relationship and how they found me and my husband. They basically said we are all here today because we decided to take a DNA test for fun and discovered 54 plus siblings. They never once mentioned anything about donors, lying, or the dead dad story. But you can probably assume my family members were left to use their imagination. Even before the speeches happened, my mother was not nice the entire day. She wouldn't smile in photos, she didn't show up to the mother-daughter first look, instead, she arrived 4 hours late, and she never once complimented me or my husband about the wedding, my dress, or how I looked. Then, to top it all off, I reluctantly agreed to a mother-daughter dance after my maid of honor convinced me many months prior. Instead of using that moment as a special time between us to chat or express how happy she was for us, she used it to yell at me, quietly enough that you couldn't hear over the loud music, but loud enough to know it was rude yelling, and belittle me. All while I had to stand there dancing with her, smiling to make it look like everything was fine to our guests. So, yeah, after all the awful things she did that day and throughout my life, I wasn't going to let her ruin our wedding day. If you think what I did was wrong, I can live with that. I cannot live a life of lies and secrets.